2 nights ago, something happened that I can't seem to shake off. My name is Emily, and I live with my husband, Alex, in a remote area off a secluded highway, nestled between vast stretches of woodland. Our nearest neighbor is a good mile away. It was around 10 p.m., and Alex and I were on our back deck, enjoying the quiet night air. The sky was clear, stars twinkling like tiny beacons in the vast darkness. We were lost in a comfortable silence, the kind that only comes with years of being together, when a blood-curdling scream shattered the night. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my heart racing. Alex nodded, his face suddenly tense. The screams continued, each one more desperate than the last. They were coming from the direction of the highway. "Help me, please, someone!" The voice was unmistakably a woman's, filled with pure terror. Fear gripped me. My first instinct was to hide, to protect ourselves. But then, the figure of a woman emerged, running frantically along the highway. Our house, set back from the road, was shrouded in darkness. Our only source of light, the glow from the Johnsons' house across the highway, still adorned with Christmas lights despite it being February. "Alex, we need to help her," I found myself saying, even as part of me wanted to lock the doors and hide. Alex was already moving, pulling on his jacket and boots. "I'll go check. Stay here. Call 911, he said, determination in his voice. I watched him disappear into the night, feeling a mix of fear and pride. Pulling out my phone, I dialed 911 with trembling fingers. That's when I saw it. A red sedan speeding down the highway. It screeched to a halt near the woman. A man's voice, angry and loud, cut through the night. "I'll kill you," he yelled. Panic surged through me. I couldn't make out his face, but his intentions were clear. The woman, now clearly visible in the dim light, turned and ran directly towards our house. My heart pounded as I relayed everything to the 911 operator. I instructed my 10-year-old daughter, Lily, to take her younger brother and hide in our bedroom. Alex met the woman halfway, his voice calm but firm. "Are you okay? What happened?" She was a mess. Her face was bruised, and she had cuts and scrapes all over. Between sobs, she explained that she'd gotten into the car with the man, thinking he was safe. But halfway through, he started acting bizarrely and refused to let her out. In a desperate attempt to escape, she had jumped from the moving car. Alex was leading her towards the house when the red sedan pulled up right across our property. The man was outside now, shouting threats and obscenities. I was on the phone with the police, relaying every detail, my voice shaking. Then came the bang on the door. "I know she's in there," the man yelled. My mind raced with fear. He's going to break in, I thought. I grabbed the largest knife from the kitchen, my hands shaking. "We have a gun," Alex shouted back, trying to sound intimidating. The threat seemed to stall the man momentarily, and then, salvation. The flashing lights of a police car pulling up. The man bolted, disappearing into the thick woods. The police took care of the woman, ensuring she got back safely to her home just a few houses down from us. As for the man, he vanished into the night. The woods provided too many hiding places. Since that night, a lingering fear has stayed with me. The thought that he's still out there somewhere makes me shiver. I just hope he stays far away from our home, from our family. I hope we never see him again. So this happened a couple of years ago when I searched for a place to stay on Airbnb for about a week. I didn't want a really big place, as I just wanted a bit of privacy. But when I say privacy, I didn't want to be too isolated either. Some Airbnb options were too remote for my liking. Unfortunately, my wife passed away suddenly from a brief illness 8 months ago, so I needed to go somewhere different with my 2 kids, Leo, who is 10 years old, and Sophia, who is 13. We all needed a change because it was a really hard time for our family. Finally, I found a house near Boulder, Colorado. It had 3 bedrooms and a nice private garden, not too far from towns or people. The pictures on the website looked appealing, and the reviews were all positive. So I made a plan to stay there for a week and a half and paid the money to secure our stay. My brother-in-law helped me pack all the essential things we needed and gave me advice on how to take care of Leo. He has some special learning needs that my wife was really skilled at managing. Sometimes Leo would have difficult moments that were hard for me to manage, but my brother-in-law assisted me and showed me some ways to handle Leo when he was struggling. We had a little talk before our vacation, and it turned out to be really useful, but I have to admit it was all a bit overwhelming for me, starting with packing up and getting ready. It felt like a big step forward, almost like saying goodbye to my wife one last time. I knew I had to adapt to this new situation somehow. I packed up the car with food, drinks, games, bedding, and last-minute items for the kids. The drive took about 4 hours, and fortunately, everything went smoothly. We arrived at a charming house with a long driveway surrounded by bushes and a spacious lawn. The house had 2 floors and looked just as inviting as it did online. We got there around 4:30 p.m., which was earlier than I had anticipated. We went inside, looked around, and chose our bedrooms. Then both Leo and Sophia were excited when they saw the backyard through the large window in the living room. In the middle of the lawn, there was a stunning swimming pool with a slide. Both of them knew how to swim, so they were eager to jump in right away. I told them we needed to unpack first. I didn't remember seeing the pool on the Airbnb website, but it was a pleasant surprise, and they both loved it. The pool provided a great way to unwind and feel better after the tough time we had been through. I had to quickly learn how to do things that my wife used to handle for our family. My kids were pretty straightforward about not liking some of the meals I initially tried to cook, but I improved over time. After we finished swimming, I cooked some food, I think it was spaghetti, and they seemed to enjoy it. Later, we sat around talking and watched a bit of TV. When it was around 9 p.m., I got the kids ready for bed and then went downstairs to have a beer. I was outside on the patio, gazing at the pool and just relaxing while I listened to the wind. The breeze was making a peculiar sound, like flutes playing as it moved through the bushes. It shifted direction and whistled in an intriguing manner. It felt peaceful but also a bit unusual. I had been sitting there for about 45 minutes when suddenly I heard the doorbell ring. I got up from the patio and walked through the house to the door. When I opened it, there was nobody there. I looked around. I hadn't taken long to get to the door, so I wondered why the person would have left so quickly. I peeked out the side windows, but couldn't see anyone. I thought I should check on the kids to make sure the doorbell didn't wake them up. I went to see Leo first, and fortunately, he was still asleep. But Sophia was sitting up in bed. She asked me, "Dad, who was at the door?" I didn't want to alarm her, so I told her that someone probably had the wrong house number. I reassured her that there was no need to worry and that she should go back to sleep. I closed her door, but was still perplexed by the doorbell incident. I returned to my seat with my drink by the pool, but as I approached my chair, I abruptly stopped because I saw someone sitting in it. I cautiously approached the front of my chair to see who was there. To my surprise, there was an elderly woman sitting, wearing a woolen coat. Her hair was silver and thin, and she looked to be around 75 years old. I asked her, "Excuse me, why are you here?" She turned and said, "Oh, Mr. Thompson." I told her my name wasn't Mr. Thompson. She looked at me and said, "You know very well." I kept insisting that I didn't know who she was or what she was talking about. I explained that I rented this Airbnb and my kids were upstairs sleeping. I emphasized that I wasn't Mr. Thompson, and I certainly wasn't there to clean the pool. Then she stood up and looked directly at me. She said, "Don't fuss, Mr. Thompson. Just clean the pool like you're supposed to." She walked off along the side path toward the front driveway. I tried to stop her by calling out, "Don't come back here, or I'll call the police." I didn't understand her odd behavior, but I wanted to show strength to deter her from returning. However, she didn't respond. She just continued down the driveway, turned left, and then she was out of sight. No flashlight, no light, no sign of any vehicle. I went back inside the house. This was turning into a really peculiar first night of our vacation. I decided I needed a good night's sleep. After ensuring the kids were sleeping soundly, I went to bed myself. I double-checked each door and window to ensure they were securely locked. Later in the night, something woke me. I wasn't sure what it was, but I glanced at the clock, and it was 3:15 a.m. Then I turned over and got a shock because the strange old woman from the patio was standing next to my bed. She said, "Thompson, the pool isn't good enough yet." After that, she walked out of the bedroom and went downstairs. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and immediately called the police. I reported that there was an intruder in the house who shouldn't be there. An elderly lady had somehow gotten inside while we were staying in the Airbnb. At first, the dispatcher didn't really believe me and even chuckled, but eventually they realized I was serious. While waiting for the police, I rushed to check that my kids were all right, and thankfully, they were fine. Then I went downstairs and noticed a damp trail on the stairs leading to the front door. I opened it, but she was nowhere to be seen. Soon after, the police arrived. They searched the house and the surrounding area but found no trace of her or anything she might have left behind. The police officers suggested that the elderly lady might have been confused and entered the wrong house, thinking it was somewhere else. They took a report and left. I couldn't sleep after that and just sat in the living room until dawn, waiting for the sun to come up. We stayed for the rest of our vacation, but I never saw the elderly woman again. To this day, I still wonder who she was and why she came to our Airbnb that night. The experience was unsettling, but it also became a bizarrely memorable part of our trip. My past 3 years, my true friends and I have been taking turns to surprise each other. We plan a 12-day vacation somewhere not too far from where we live. We decide on a budget for where we'll stay and pick a set time for the trip. This year it was my turn to do the surprising, so after I sorted out all the details, I invited Ethan and Max over to my house. We had tacos and sodas, and that's when I shared the news. Ethan came over first, and he's always punctual. But Max, who we were still waiting for, usually arrives a bit later, but in a stylish way. Unlike Ethan and me, Max still lives with his parents, while we each have our own houses. All three of us are in our mid-20s, and we've been friends for a long time since we went to high school and university together. So finally, after 30 minutes, Max showed up, said sorry for being late, and joined us by sitting down. We all started eating tacos and having our drinks. Then for about an hour we talked about what each of us was up to. After that, Ethan looked at me and said, "Hey Dylan, let's stop with the small talk and tell us what you've planned this year." So I began by saying that unlike the past years, I won't be showing you pictures or videos of the place I booked on the internet. That part will be a surprise. But I can tell you that I've reserved a charming cottage in a serene area by the Crystal Lake's south shore. Then I told them that we're going to do a lot of fun things outdoors, so they should pack enough clothes and gear. "And hey Max, since you've got the biggest van, could you drive us?" Max said, "Sure thing," and both of them seemed curious because I wasn't giving away too much information at first. We all agreed to meet at Max's house on Friday morning around 9 a.m. We planned to leave our cars there at his parents' place, which had a large villa and a really spacious driveway. We started our journey on time, following the route I gave. The trip took a little over 5 hours, including a couple of stops for restroom breaks. The final 40 minutes of our journey were on a winding road by the lake, surrounded by forests and nature. Eventually, I saw a sign up ahead that said, "Mystic Retreat." So we made a sharp right turn onto a gravel road with trees and woods on both sides. The road ended in a clearing, and there was a quaint wooden cottage with 2 floors right in front. We parked the van and got out. Ethan and Max both said, "Dude, this place is really cool." When we looked at the front of the cottage, we could see it leading down to a little beach area by the lake. We walked up to the front door, and I put in the code on the keypad to get inside. We carried all our things inside, and then hurried to pick the best bedroom. There were 3 bedrooms, and all of them were nice, but surprisingly there were no arguments this time, which was different from our usual vacations. We made some food and brought it outside. I said, "If you look over there to your right, you'll see the shed with 3 kayaks. We can go explore with them tomorrow. The owner mentioned there are also some fishing rods we can use if we want." Both Ethan and Max looked at me and said, "Excellent. That sounds like a really good idea. Let's plan for that tomorrow, unless we're feeling tired from last night. The next morning, we all woke up reasonably early, which for us was around 11 a.m. After breakfast, we gathered our clothes and went to the small building. Inside, we found 2 kayaks, but we also found a spare one lying in the corner, hidden away. I'm not sure if we were supposed to use it, but we did anyway. There was a kayak where you sit inside, and a few different kinds of paddles and life jackets. Luckily, there were cushions to sit on in the kayaks, which made it more comfortable. We carried the kayaks down a path to the lake's beach and set off onto the water. It took us about 30 minutes to figure out how to paddle and keep our balance. None of us had tried kayaking before. We paddled for about an hour along the shore when we reached some rocks jutting into the deeper part of the lake. When Ethan saw it, he said to us, "We need to stop, but we should do some diving here." We beached the kayaks and climbed up onto the rocks. We started looking down into the water, and it was extremely clear, so we took it in turns to do more and more extreme dives and jumps. Then Max said, "Out the way, I'm going to do some flips off the rocks." He disappeared into the water after a big splash. When he came up, he shouted, "I need some help, guys. I got my leg caught on something." I looked down and I could see there was blood in the water underneath him. I shouted to Ethan, "We need to get down there and help him." We jumped down from the rocks and ran to the beach. We helped Max get out of the water as his ankle was bleeding a lot from a cut. I used my extra t-shirt to wrap around the wound and try to stop the bleeding. Max had trouble standing, so we leaned him against one of the kayaks to make him comfortable while we figured out what to do next. Did either of you bring a phone? I forgot mine. They both shook their heads. I sighed and said, "Well, then we messed up. We need to go back to the cottage. There should be a first aid kit there. If that's not enough, we'll have to drive you to the nearest doctor or hospital to get some stitches. The wound looks serious, and I thought it might need stitches, but I'm not a doctor." Then Ethan spoke up. "Hey guys, we might have another issue." He pointed in the opposite direction from where we were standing. "Look, see over there near the trees by the shore." Both of us turned our heads to where Ethan was pointing. Right there by the tree line was a big gray animal. "It's a dog," I said, but Max disagreed, saying, "No, that's a coyote." As we watched, more of them came out from the bushes. Max said, "I see 5 of them. They're curious because of the blood, so we have to be really careful and keep an eye on them. We don't have any weapons, and there's no way we could run away from them. Our best option is the water, but I'm not sure if they can swim well, as I'm not very knowledgeable about animals," I said. Right then, we noticed that they were slowly coming down to the beach and moving around together. I told everyone that we should help Max onto his kayak, so Ethan and I lifted him up. We could still see blood coming out from under the shirt we tied around his wound. The coyotes started acting strangely. They began to trot around, and one of them even tried to come close to the water. That's when I shouted, "Quick, get into the kayaks. We can't stay here." We all got in our kayaks, and I managed to paddle, holding on to Max's kayak while Ethan paddled next to us. We needed to get to the cottage as fast as possible. We paddled with the coyotes following us along the shore. It was frightening and thrilling at the same time. We reached the cottage, got Max out of the kayak, and carried him inside. We found the first aid kit and did what we could to stop the bleeding. I knew that we had to get Max to the hospital, so we packed everything up quickly. We drove him to the nearest town where he got stitches for his wound. The doctor said he was lucky that it wasn't any worse. After that, we decided to cut our trip short and head back home. Max was okay, but he couldn't do much, and we were all shaken up by the coyote encounter. We made a pact that next time we'd choose a less adventurous location for our vacation, and maybe, just maybe, we'd stick to the usual beach resort.